Jay had a really good question popped up on the live stream. He says, on the topic of building bravery and courage, do you ever find that a dog can sometimes misuse the confidence and begin to explore a new set of unwanted behaviors? And then what does working through that look like? So for instance, like you get a dog that's maybe a little bit timid and can be a little bit snarky, but then like as they gain confidence, maybe they start expressing some assertiveness in other places. Like I know I've seen this, I think more than like stuff like interpersonal with myself. I think I've seen it actually more often in dog on dog socialization, where we get a dog who might be a little bit, you know, more timid or insecure, and we work on socializing with them. We're advocating for them. We're teaching them they can sort of count on us. And then some dogs, when they see that they've got like a bodyguard, right, they start going like, okay. And like all of a sudden, instead of being shy and timid or retreating away from conflict, they feel a little bit too bold in the way that they're addressing conflict. Like the pendulum swings to the other side. So I know I've seen it a lot in that context personally. I don't know that I can point to a case where I saw it happen with like, okay, I have a dog that's like timid with me handling it. And then I kind of get through the other side of that. And now it's being like snappy with me or snappier towards other people or anything like that. But I've definitely seen it in socialization, because so much in socialization, like we are sort of being the dog's protector and advocating for them and sort of standing up for like fighting on their side. And I've seen a few dogs that they go, oh, like I've never had a posse before. Like, this is cool. Like I've got a posse now. And they start like, it's kind of like, you know, like a teenage boy, like first time he realizes that he's got some friends that like he and his friends, when they're together, like they can, you know, they can scuffle some people up. And all of a sudden they're like talking smack a lot more than they used to be. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
that's not, I've never seen this side of you before.
True.
Yeah.
They're not going to shy away from picking a fight. Whereas if they were walking down the street by themselves, they might be a little bit more shy. You know what I mean?
I think the biggest balance there is don't put limits on it so soon, because this is kind of where you want it to get the dog, but then eventually and inevitably there has to be limits to anything. You can see this sometimes on a walk. So obviously I've been dabbling with windows. I have a window series on Consider the Dog, and I got this from J Jack, and it's really just teaching a dog time and place. But sometimes you get dogs that are so clingy to you and so stuck and don't ever want to leave your side, that you spend time really nurturing that free window or that okay window and getting them to explore, and then they become confident doing it. And now they're confident in a way where it's like, oh man, now this guy's trying to pick this up, or now this guy's trying to go around this mailbox or go over here. And it's getting to a point where this is the thing that you nurtured is now the thing that you have to kind of put the brakes on a little bit. So with anything else in life, there has to be limits. My advice would be, don't be so quick to add the specifics or the details to those limits if you were just nurturing that thing. So you might have to be a little bit more lenient, but don't at the same time be afraid to put limits on something. It's just creating boundaries and teaching how. And everything that you look at, you're allowed to do something, but there are limits to how you can do it. I'm a big hockey fan, so I use hockey often. You can fight in hockey, but there are limits. You can't use your stick and whack someone in the head. You can't punch someone in the groin. You can't take off your skate like Adam Sandler in Happy Gilmore and try to use it to fight someone. So there are things you can do. You can hit in hockey, but you can only hit somebody that has the puck. You can't hit somebody without. So eventually you're going from level 1, which is super easy in that video game that you're playing, that is to build a confidence, to get this kid thinking he's an actual, from not thinking he's a gamer to, oh my God, like maybe I'm good at this. Maybe I should stream and play this game live, to then giving him a little bit of a humbling or a little bit of a challenging level where he has to kind of learn how to beat this new rule set. So just think of it as a rule set. That's the best way that I could explain it, I feel.
Yeah. And I think, kind of along the same lines of like, don't be too eager to like address the newfound thing, especially if you're still trying to prioritize like whatever first situation you were trying to get the dog over was. Like here's a good example that's sort of like, it's unrelated to aggression, but this is something that I actually see come up a lot in my work. Most of what I do these days is coaching other trainers. And so sometimes trainers in one lesson have like multiple goals. Well, I would say more often than not, this occurs because they haven't actually thought clearly about their goals, but they're doing things that serve two different goals. And sometimes those goals can contradict each other. So for instance, let's say somebody's trying to teach their dog like a controlled walking, which means like you got to stay sort of at or behind my left leg. But sometimes this is the kind of dog that sometimes just can shut down on the walk and maybe just put on the brakes. And so we need to sort of encourage him forward. Right. And if we are trying to work both those two things at the same time early on in training, we can create a really confusing situation for the dog and end up slowing down learning a lot on both of those things. Right. Because we go, hey, we need you to move. We need you to move. And the dog finally moves and accidentally goes a little too far. We go, nope, don't do that. They go, yes. Oh, what the heck? And then they ping pong back again. Right. And you just get this like whipsaw sort of action. And so a lot of times I'm like, no, like pick a priority, pick a goal and focus on that. And so if our goal is, hey, we want to get this dog past this whole shutting down, putting on brakes thing, then like we're not worried in that same session if the dog shoots past our left leg and gets a little bit in front of us. Like that's not a concern of ours. Now, something might occur like, okay, now the dog not only shoots past our left leg, but when he does, like, whatever, like it's because he's trying to bite somebody that's walking by. Well, we might then need to change our priority and say, you know what? Okay, we're going to not worry about when he puts on the brakes right now. We're going to just sort of live with that because we've got to deal with this shooting past my leg situation. You know what I mean? So you might change your priority, but we want to be careful about like knowing what our goal is, focusing on one goal at a time, or at least making sure that if we are doing like multiple birds with one stone, that we're not doing things that can contradict each other or that can create confusion, because confusion is a major source of stress in training situations. Like when you use a correction or a punishment, if there's clarity with it, any stress that's there is incredibly transitory. Like it's brief and the dog overcomes it really quick. If you get lasting stress, it's usually because the dog was very confused as to what just happened and doesn't really know what caused it, doesn't really know what to do in the future. And I could see that happening, right? Like, let's say you're working with that dog in the pool, you're putting some leash pressure on him to get in the pool. And when he finally gets in, like maybe he spazzes out a little bit, right? Like if you dealt with that by like bonking him, right? Then next time you go to try to get him in the pool, he's gonna be like, no, because look what happened last time. It was terrible. Yeah. But if when he spazzes out, you just sort of like calmly, to go back to like the collar thing, like maybe you've got a wider collar that you can grab so he can't turn his head and bite you. And you can just sort of hold on and like let him go through that moment and like let him get past it, but like not really worry about that, right? Like just deal with that for the moment because your bigger priority was just the fact that he got in the pool and you don't want to like lose the forest for the trees. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And then you go, okay, like let's get him getting in the pool confidently. And then if this other issue still exists, like then we'll address it at that time, or let's figure out a different exercise we can do away from the pool that'll allow us to tap into this sort of reactionary response that he's having. You know what I mean? So that we're not undermining ourselves with these two different things.
That's, it's, you put it so beautifully. I think knowing what is a win, like what are we going to consider success? Like, yes, that's it right there. And not overlook a dog's success and what we were initially shooting for, because we're expecting details on this other thing. It's just so crucial. It's so important, because if you're doing too much too soon, it turns the whole situation into a crappy feeling one. And how a dog feels actually matters. And that's also something that I really heavily focused on in that pool video was getting Jay to feel better in general. And that's also something that I posted. I feel like I'm just plugging certain links. I now have a subscriber page on Instagram, because that's just something that was new. So there's an Instagram subscription platform that they're dabbling with. And I just posted a video this morning titled "Not All Growling is Created Equal." In the beginning, this dog that I'm dealing with, possessive resource guarder, and I'm actually putting out a course for Consider the Dog about it, without hesitation was lunging and would aggressively try to bite and snap. And the growling was different than the growling that I ignored in today's video that I posted. And I wanted to kind of just, in the video, I highlight that I ignored this growling because it's actually a success and the dog is showing hesitation. And now I want to get on the success train of the dog feeling better about taking direction in this challenging setting. Whereas earlier in the program, the way that the dog was growling was much more offensive and was much more with intent. And I was a lot stricter and a lot harsher on that dog in that moment. But the dog was growling in both situations, but the growls were different and I handled them differently. So that again goes with a no absolutes. I'm not going to correct or punish every single growl. You're not going to be so strict with a walk if you're trying to get a dog moving. Now they're moving in a way where you need them over here. It's just try to be smart. And if you can focus on a dog feeling good and prioritize that, it's a nice way to kind of have that meter of saying, yeah, that's my limit right now. I think the dog's going to feel good here, and that's going to feel like a victory and a form of success for the dog. Let me not push for too much more. If you can view it that way and prioritize, is the dog feeling good, and is this the highest point of the dog feeling good, I think you'll be in a good spot.
Yeah, man. I mean, I love that. It's just so important to know what your goal is when you go into a training session, whether you're a professional trainer or you're just working with your own dog. Like, what do I hope to accomplish in this training session? And like, what are the signs that I've made progress towards that goal? You know what I mean? And having that clear in your head before you start, I feel like can be so crucial. Another really quick example that popped into my head that's again, like not aggression related or not like confidence related, but it's the same idea that I think almost anybody can kind of relate to this, is on the recall. I remember working with a client one time whose dog always gave her a really hard time on the recall. And we were finally at a place where the dog was doing quite well, but he wasn't like sitting perfectly, like where she wanted when he got there. Like he would come to her, he would stop, he would like linger around her, but the sit was a little bit iffy. And she was like, I think she had the dog on an e-collar at this point. And she was like, should I correct him for not sitting? And I was like, no, because like, he's just at this point where like, he's getting the recall right now. Like he's nailing it. He's doing awesome. And let's not lose the forest for the trees. Like at the end of the day, how much do we care about the dog sitting versus how much do we care that the dog like came to us and stopped? And I'm not going to say that we're not ever going to like fix the sit, but like
now it doesn't matter.
Right now it doesn't matter. Or if I wanted to do it, I would just use like some positive reinforcement, maybe lure him into a sit. Like I'm going to go about that sit in such a way that it doesn't undermine what is like my actual goal for the session. Like my actual goal is just getting the dog to reliably come to me. Getting him to sit when he gets there is like something different. And if we correct him, he goes, well, like maybe next time when you call me, like maybe I'm going to give it a second thought, especially if there's something else kind of interesting to do, because it's sort of a 50-50. Like when I get there, it might actually be kind of a crappy experience for me. You know what I mean? And again, I'm not saying that it's never appropriate to add a correction for like the failure to sit, but it depends on where you're at in your training with the dog. And again, like how confident is the dog in the first piece of that training? And if it's like you're in a 3-week board and train, like the dog's only had 3 weeks of that, right? Or 4 weeks of that. And so like we might deal with the sit, but we're not going to be like real hard about it. We're going to celebrate the fact that like you came when I called you. Like, hell yes, you came when I called you,
It's so funny how much everything relates. And there's just so many examples, because I look at, we're talking about it with sports. I'll bring an example with martial arts. You can see how with kids to a white belt to a more advanced belt in martial arts, or in this case, jiu-jitsu, I remember as a white belt working on an arm bar, and I was still new. And like when you're first doing this martial art, it's hard. and keeping up with it and feeling like you were accomplished is one thing. Me working on an armbar, I would see the black belt come over, and what I did at the moment I was proud of. And like the guy would say, yeah, like great job, that looks pretty good. But then he would go over to the other black belt or the brown belt who was more advanced than I was at the time. And I saw the guy's armbar. It looked fantastic. It looked way better than mine. But yet the black belt has all these critiques and all these constructive criticisms and all these details. No, you got to tighten up over here. You got to do this and do that. And I'm looking at it and I'm like, that was way better than mine. How come you just told me mine was good? And it was because at the stage that I was learning at, it didn't matter. And it felt good for me to feel accomplished in doing it. But down the road, once I was ready, once I was at that guy's stage, he was going to hit me with all these details. But at this point, it didn't matter. And the same thing is for kids' classes. You see the, oh, great job, that's so good. But now that I have a different viewpoint on things, I go, ooh, I see what can be tightened up in that moment. But wow, I guess it really doesn't matter for that kid right now because he accomplished it. Help him or her to feel good in this moment. And how you feel gets you wanting to come back and gets you wanting to take the criticism next time so that you can get better because you actually enjoy being there. So everything comes kind of full circle to what we've been talking about.
Full circle, man. All right.